Good morning, grade 7 students. Welcome to the math classroom. So we are now in week number 6. And we are going to describe principal roots and tells whether they are rational or irrational. So in principal root, we have two kinds, either rational or irrational. So in your activity sheet, we have points to remember. So we have terms, just like principal root. What is principal root? Perfect squares, rational numbers, irrational numbers. So as we go on to the next succeeding slide, you will learn what principal root is, perfect square, rational, and irrational numbers. Take note that every radical has three parts. The first part is what we call the radical symbol. So that's the symbol for radical. Number 2 is the index. Index is a little or small number on the left of radical sign. Number 3, we have radicand, a number inside of the radical sign. So these are the three parts of radical. Okay? So let's have here an example. So this figure or part is what we call the radical. How are we going to read our radical? You will start on the index, cube root of 64. So 3 is what we call index. Okay? So it should be, the size should be smaller than the radicand. Inside of the radical symbol is what we call radicand. So if you will read a radical, it should always start on the index, followed by the radicand. So since the index is 3, you will read this as cube root of 64. Next, when the index of the radical is not shown, then it is understood to be an index of 2. It is just like this. You cannot find any index in this example because it is understood that the index is 2. So this will read as square root of 64, which is also the same as this symbol. Square root of 64. Next, how are we going to find out for square root of 64? So this will be your solution. Okay, so you can have a trial and error method. Let's say, think of a number that if you will square or multiply that number by itself, it gives 64. Correct. The answer is 8. Why 8? Because 8 times 8 is equal to 64. And this number result, okay, this number should be subtracted from the radicand 64. So we have here minus 64 gives 0. Next, how do you call 8? The result in getting square root of 64 is what we call principal root. Next, how about 64? So since the principal root is 8, 64 is what we call a perfect square. Next, let's have this. How about if the index is 2? The same process. So you think of a number, but this time, you multiply it 3 times by itself. So it will be 4 cubed. Okay, so if you will think of a number, you always have cube. Okay, it should be raised to the third power. So 4 times 4 is 16 times 4 is 64. 64 is not a perfect square. Instead, it is called a perfect cube because the index is 3. If the index is 2, it is a perfect square. If the index is 3, perfect cube. If the index is 4, it is perfect fourth. Okay? 5, perfect 5. So if the index is 5, you think of a number and then multiply it 5 times by itself. So ganun lang yon. And 4 is what we call a principal root. Okay, I hope you are following. Next, how to classify rational and irrational numbers, just like square root of 20. Is it rational or irrational? Square root of 100, square root of 54, square root of 30, and square root of 15. Which one here is rational? Which one is irrational? Okay. Rational number. If a number is a perfect square or a perfect end root, then the principal root is rational, just like square root of 64. Okay, 64 is a perfect square, therefore the root is rational. Let's say cube root of 64. Cube root of 64, 64 is a perfect cube, therefore the principal root is rational. And rational is opposite to irrational. When we say irrational, if a number is not a perfect square or a perfect end root, pag sinabi nating end root, pwedeng ang index niya ay 3, 4, 5, and so on. Then, the principal root is irrational. Okay, are you familiar with multiplication table? Multiplication table or chart is a tool used to identify perfect square. It is just like 1. 1 is a perfect square because if you will square 1, the result is 1. Next, 4 is a perfect square. If you will get square root of 4, the result is 2. 9. Square root of 9 is 3 because 3 times 3 is 9. 16. 4 times 4 is 16. Same true to 25, 36, 49, 64, that is 8 times 8, 81, 100, 121, 144. How about more than 144? Okay, so we have multiplication chart or table 20 by 20. Okay, so if we have 144, that is 12 times 12. Next, we have 13, and that is 13 times 13 is 169, 196, 225, and so on. You can have other table. Okay, take note that all the rest, we have 2, 3, 6, okay? All the rest here are not perfect square, okay? They are what we call not a perfect square, or they are what we call irrational number. In terms of principal root, they are irrational number. Next, I have also here cube root examples. Let's say 1 is a perfect cube because 1 raised to the third power or 1 cube is 1. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 2 cube. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. We have 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Times 3 is 27. Okay, so in here, in the radicals, we have cube root of 1 is 1. Cube root of 8 is 2. Cube root of 27 is 3. And so on and so forth. Okay, in here, we have Okay, so may I change this? Okay, so if we have cube root of 512, this should be 8, this is 9, and this is 10. Because 10 times 10 is 100, times 10 is 1,000. So these are just some tool on how to find out for whether the principal root is rational or irrational. So you can also have perfect fourth root. Parang ganun siya. Okay? But, what's important in here is you know on how to multiply. Kahit wala na yung table, wala na yung chart, kung alam mong mag-multiply, madali na lamang siya. Okay. Reminder, if we have 4th raised to the 3rd power, your solution should be 4 times 4 times 4. Yung mga ibang ginagawa niya is 4 times 3. That is incorrect. It should be multiply it 3 times by itself. Okay, next. 4th root, example. Okay, ganyan din siya. So you are going to multiply the number 4 times by itself. So 2 raised to the 4th power is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So you can have 16. 3 to the 4th is 81. So the radicals here are what we call perfect fourth root. Perfect fourth root. Okay? Because they are, and the principal roots are rational. Okay? So in your activity sheets, activity number 1, you are going to tell whether the principal roots of each number are rational or irrational. So ang magiging sagot ninyo from numbers 1 to number 10 should be rational or irrational. Let's have number 1. Square root of 77. Okay. Square root of 77. If we will consider the chart in table of multiplication, 77 is not found in, okay, it's not a perfect square. 77 is not a perfect square. Lahat ng mga numbers dito, excluding yung kapareha niya dito sa gitna, ang lahat-lahat ng yon ay tinatawag na irrational number. So ito lamang yung mga tinatawag na rational number. Kapag ka 77 ay nandun siya sa labas, okay, nandun siya sa labas, either to the right or to the left. Okay? Basta except lang yung 4, yung 9, yung mga number na nandito, hindi siya kasama. Okay? So that is what we call irrational numbers. Okay, are you following? So, ang tawag sa kanya ay irrational number. Okay, do not confuse about the decimal number. Okay, do not confuse about the decimal number. Let's say, square root of 13. O, dito na lamang tayo sa 13. Ang square root of 13 ba is rational or irrational? So, wag na ninyong, tingnan ninyo yung square root of 13 and 689. Pwedeng dagdagan ninyo yung, yung table of multiplication ninyo. Okay? Next, we have here another one. Classifying principal roots. Direction. You classify the following principal roots, whether rational or irrational, by rewriting the values to the corresponding box. Okay. So, dito ninyo ilalagay yung sagot ninyo. Ano-ano nga ba yung mga examples ng radical na rational and irrational? So ito, ililipat mo lamang siya dito. Okay, let's say, cube root of 22. Let's say, ang sagot dyan ay irrational. Isusulat mo dito yung cube root of 22. Halimbawa lang, hindi ko sinabing yan ang tamang sagot. Okay? Another one, fourth root of 81. Halimbawa siya ay rational, dito mo isusulat yung rational. Ay, dito mo isusulat yung fourth root of 81. And so on. Okay? So, ang lahat ng mga ito, itatransform mo lang dito, ililipat mo lamang siya dito because of the word rewrite. Okay? You rewrite the values to the corresponding box. I hope naintindihan ninyo yon. Next. Another, we have activity number 3, more on classifying roots. Direction, you identify whether true or false. Let's say, cube root of 225. You think of a number that if you will multiply it 3 times by itself, it gives 225. Okay? Can we have 5? 5 times 5 is 25. Or you can go back to your yung cube root natin. Dito. Cube root of 225. We don't have. Wala tayong cube root of 225 na rational. Okay? Wala. Next. Ay, nawawala na tuloy tayo. Ayan. Ayan. So, ang magiging sagot lang ninyo dito is true or false. Okay? Kasi kapag ka cube root of 225, so mag-isip ka trial and error. So, the ending is 5. So, pwedeng yung ang iisipin mong number is 5. 5 times 5, 25 times 5, 125. So, it is less than 225. You think another. Can we have 15? 15 plus 15 times 15 is 225. But if you will multiply again by 15, it is more than 225. Therefore, cube root of 225 is not irrational. So, your answer in number 1 is false. Okay, so ganun lang yon. So, you try to analyze or make use of the table of multiplication. Okay? So, if it is index 3, so tingnan mo doon sa aking binigay. Dito naman sa number 2, fifth root. So, i-multiply mo siya 5 times by itself. Okay? So, ganun lang yon. Next. So, we are now in week number 6, set 2. So, you are going to determine whether what 2 integers the square root of a number is. So, dito sa ating lesson, ang papag-aralan natin are irrational numbers. So, determine between 2 integers the square root of a number is. So, maghahanap tayo ng dalawang integer na kung saan that is in between of that given irrational number. Okay? So, we have square roots. Alam na natin ang square roots. Okay? Square root of 9. So, we have 3. Right? And 9 is a perfect square because the principal root is 3. Next, let's say this one. Square root of 20. Halimbawa, nasaan ang square root of 20 natin? Ito, ang square root of 20. Ang square root of 20 is not a perfect square. Therefore, 20 is irrational. 20 is irrational, right? Pero, what in between of 2 integer, square root of 20 lies? Nandun siya sa pagitan ng perfect square na 16 and 25. Square root of 16 is 4, square root of 25 is 5, therefore square root of 20 is in between of 4 and 5. Ganon siya. Another one, square root of 45. Ang square root of 45 is irrational. Okay, the principal root is irrational. Pero nasaan siya? So, nandun siya sa 9. Okay, tingnan natin ha. 45. 45, nandito yung 45 natin. So, ang 45 ay nasa pagitan ng 49 at saka 64. Tama ba? Yung square root of 45, no. Square root of 45 ay nasa pagitan ng 36 at saka 49. Therefore, square root of 45 is in between of 6 and 7. Okay, another one. Let's say, square root of 160. Okay, nasa ang pagitan siya? 144 at saka 169. Ibig sabihin, square root of 160 is in between of 12 and 13. Okay. Next. Ayan. Kagaya halimbawa dito sa activity number 1 natin, turned in between. Okay? Direction. Identify the two consecutive integers in which the square root lie in between. Okay? Let's have a square root of 77. Okay. Balikan natin yung ating table. Square root of 77. Okay. Ang 77 ay ito yon. Pero siya ay nasa gitna. Okay? Between means nasa gitna. Square root of 77. Nasa gitna siya ng 64 at saka ng 81. So, ang square root of 64 ay 8. Ang square root of 81 ay 9. So, nandun siya sa in-between of 8 and 9. Therefore, ang sagot ninyo dito ay 8 and 9. Okay, anuhin natin ha. Mag-insert tayo ng text box. So, dito, ang sagot dito ay 9. 8. At saka sa kabila naman ay 9. So, ganito dapat ang magiging sagot ninyo. So, dalawa yung magiging check ninyo dito. Oh, no. Dalawa yung magiging check ninyo dito. Yung 8 at saka yung 9. Okay? Nagkakaintindihan tayo? Oh, parang ganyan siya. So, 8 and 9. Yan. So, dalawa ang sagot natin sa activity 1. Okay, reminder. Kung kayo ay gagawa ng answer sheet ninyo, huwag kalilimutang laging isulat ang week number. So, week number 6. And then, yung title ng activity, please pakisulat para hindi tayo nahihirapang maghanap kung nasaang banda yung hinahanap natin na activity. Yung mga iba kasi magkakaano sila kung saan-saan na nagkahalo-halo na. So for week number 5, so sa isang papel yan, another paper for week number 6. Okay, take note. Meron tayo na dito square root of 2045. Lahat ng mga ito from numbers 1 to 10 ay tinatawag na irrational number. So ang hahanapin mo lamang ay yung in between of this number, okay? Ano yung dalawang yung unang number kagaya nito, yung unang number na perfect square less than 77. Yung pangalawang number na greater than 77. Kaya nga siya tinawag na in between, yung nasa pagitan. Kagaya halimbawa sa number 7, ano yung perfect square na less than 2045? Okay, yun ang hanapin mo. Ano naman yung perfect square na greater than 2,045? Okay? So, ganun lang yon. Another one, in your activity number 2, matching type. Match the roots in column A to which it lies in between. Okay. Square root of 32. So, ano-ano nga ba yung mga perfect squares natin sa table? 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, tama? 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100. Okay, so yun hanggang 1 to 100. Pwede ninyong i-memorize pa yung mga next succeeding perfect square. Kagaya halimbawa ng 11, 121, 12, 144, 13. Ilan na yung 13? 169, and so on. Okay, so if we have square root of 32, so that is 25, 36. Tama? Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 36 is 6. So your answer here in number 1 is 5 and 6. And that is letter E. Your answer should be letters only. Okay? So, ano nga ba yung magiging tool natin dito para sa pagsagot ng activity number 6 o kaya week number 6? Pwede mo siyang gamitan ng table, pero mas maigi kung memorize mo na yung mga perfect squares. Kagaya ng binanggit ko kanina, ano-ano yung mga perfect squares? 1, 4, 9, 16. Okay? 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, 169, at marami pang iba. Okay? Anyway, dito naman ay madali lang. Okay? Madali lang naman yan because the radicand are small numbers. So, letters only ang ilalagay ninyo dito. For activity number 3, crack the riddle. Ano nga ba yung riddle? What has hands but cannot clap? Oh, bugtong siya. Tama? Bugtong. Crack the answer in a riddle by identifying two consecutive integers in which the square root lie in between. Okay? In between in D, just like letter K. Halimbawa dito tayo sa, yung pinakamadali na lamang, H. H. Ano nga ba yung, so this is in opposite of activity number 2. So dito, identified na yung dalawang principal root. Ang hinahanap mo ngayon dito is yung kanyang radicand na irrational. Okay, let's say 7 and 6. Ang 6 ay 36. Tama? Ang 7 ay 49. Kunin mo yung perfect square nito. 6 times 6 is 36. 7 times 7 is 49. So, nasa ang banda ngayon, yung number na ang gitna niya ay yung kanyang dulo ay 36, 49. Okay. 36, 49. Ito yon. Okay. So, ang ilalagay mo dito na letter ay H. Tama? Ang ilalagay mo dito na letter ay H. Kagaya rin din halimbawa dito sa letter L. Okay. 5 squared is 25. This one is 36. So hanapin mo yung less than 36 but greater than 25. So square root of 33. So dito ay H, dito ay L. Bahala na kayong sumagot doon sa mga remaining perfect square. Okay, so that ends our session. Okay, so I have here a quotation. If you are not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you are determined to learn, no one can stop you. Because never stop learning. Okay, never stop learning because life never stops teaching. Okay, so that ends our session. Thank you and God bless.